Well, 2 seasons ago, they went to the college football playoff despite not winning the Big Ten. But last year, despite winning the Big Ten, Ohio State did not go to the college football playoff. Now, you might be thinking, when I put it that way, huh? How could that be? That doesn't make sense. But if you break it down, it kind of does. 2 years ago, yeah, they didn't win the Big Ten, but they lost just 1 regular season game and beat 3 teams that year who won at least 10 games. Fast forward to last year, despite winning the Big Ten for the 36th time in school history, Ohio State had 2 losses. The loss to Oklahoma didn't put the Buckeyes out of their CFP misery, but that second loss, the 31-point beatdown to an Iowa team that barely qualified for a bowl, that certainly did the trick. And thus, in essence, in retrospect, Ohio State ended up playing spoiler in that Big Ten title game, handing Wisconsin their first and only loss, meaning that for the first time ever, no Big Ten team made it to the CFP. But Urban Meyer, he's just like Nick Saban at Bama and like Dabo Swinney at Clemson. No matter how many players they have to replace, they just simply reload and contend for championships. That's not going to be any different this year. There are some defensive losses, plenty, but offensively at least, they get plenty back, including a bunch of skill players. 7 of the 11 on the offensive side of the ball return. That does include the running back in J.K. Dobbins. And the guy last year, his freshman year, 7 yards per carry, over 1,400 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns. Not bad. Mike Weber complimenting him with over 6 yards per carry. Weber's been there a while, and Weber actually last year had more touchdowns than Dobbins. Now, receiver-wise, top 5 are back. We're talking about Paris Campbell, dangerous anytime he touches the ball. And he'll also, too, be a valuable special teams player returning kicks. We're talking about K.J. Hill as well, returning 56 catches. He'll also be used on special teams. And Johnny Dixon, okay? Not saying he's Chris Carter, a former Ohio State great, but last year you can easily say all he does is catch touchdowns. Last year, only 18 catches, but 8 of them were for scores. Amazing. Now, the offensive line, they'll still be good. I don't know if they'll be as good because you lose an All-American center in Billy Price. He was amazing. And you lose an offensive tackle in Jamarco Jones. Both guys, by the way, picked in the draft. But the tackles will still be loaded with Isaiah Prince on one side, probably the left tackle, and then on the other side in Thayer Munford. You also return Michael Jordan, not your Ernest Jordan, but football player Michael Jordan at the left guard. But here's the thing for Ohio State. How will they do in the QB spot? Because you lose a guy who was there for 75 years. It seemed like J.T. Barrett was there that long, but now you bring in Dwayne Haskins, who is going to have a better arm than that of Barrett. Athletic-wise, won't be able to do the same things, in my opinion, that Barrett was able to do. But I do think Haskins will fit well into the offense, which from what I've heard is going to be more of a drop-back type of offense, which will probably be more compatible for Haskins because he can show off what he can do over the middle in terms of his throwing skills. If anything happens to Haskins as far as injury or if he underperforms, then it gets a little bit of a sensitive issue because Joe Burrow's not there anymore, a guy that would have competed for that starting position. Burrow transferred to LSU. Now let's concentrate on the defense. And Greg Schiano, yes, guys, work cut out for him. 7 of the 11 starters are gone, including 5 players picked in this past spring's draft. But not the first time that Ohio State would have to recover from losing a lot of players from the year before. Remember, 2 years ago, they lost a ton of players, and they still were able to put a great defense on the field and go 11-1 during that regular season. But you do have to replace a couple of defensive ends. Tyquan Lewis went in the second round of the draft, and you also lose Sam Hubbard, who went in round number 3. But they're deep in this area are the Buckeyes, and you do have Joey Bosa's younger brother back. That's Nick, who in 2 years for the Buckeyes has already amassed 13.5 sacks, and he's expecting a big 2018. If that happens in 2019, he may not be there anymore. He might leave early for the draft. And then on the other side, Chase Young, an up-and-coming star, you got him on the other defensive end position. Linebacker will be the biggest challenge, in my opinion, for the Buckeyes because you not only lose Jerome Baker, Adam Goodman, who got picked in the 3rd round, and you also lose to Chris Worley, but the health of Tough Borland is really going to be something to watch. He had an Achilles injury during spring ball. They think he's going to be ready to go by August, but really watch out for that. Borland last year contributed with 58 tackles. You do have the strong side linebacker back, Keandre Jones. Now, looking at the secondary, maybe the best player amongst the 11 last year, and he was the 4th overall pick in the draft, went to Cleveland in Denzel Ward. But the secondaries have been typically good in Urban Meyer's leadership since he got there earlier this decade. And you do have back Damon Arnett, 44 tackles at one corner, the other one in Kendall Sheffield. And you will have a safety back in Jordan Fuller, who had over 70 tackles a year ago, leading returning tackler, by the way, for the Buckeyes, and Isaiah Pryor at the other safety position. Buckeyes last year were 9th in the country in total defense, giving up just 300 yards per game. Let's go ahead and highlight the schedule for OSU, for the Buckeyes, that is. And the last time we saw Ohio State play, well, it was at Jerry World, Cowboy Stadium, Arlington, where they routed USC in the Cotton Bowl. The first game away from Columbus will be game number 3, and it will be at Cowboy Stadium, home slanted game for Texas Christian. This promises to be a real good game, one of the better non-conference games of the season. That's on the 15th. 2 games later, well, the Big Ten championship has either gone to Ohio State or Penn State each of the last 2 seasons, and these 2 teams have played some classics. 2 years ago, you might remember Penn State with the blocked field goal return for a touchdown, dooming Ohio State. But last year, the Buckeyes came from behind in the 4th quarter to beat the Nittany Lions by 1 point. Expecting another good game as well this time. At Purdue, shouldn't be a game that you would think you'd have to worry about because Ohio State's better than Purdue. But then again, we thought the same thing about Iowa last year, and we know what happened. Ohio State cannot overlook the Boilermakers, who are an up-and-coming team in the Big Ten West. And then Michigan State, Ohio State had their way with them last year, winning by 45 points. That's November 10th. We'll see if anything changes. And then you close out the season with Michigan, Ohio State. Well, they've only lost 1 time to the Wolverines this decade, and that year Ohio State went 6-7. Ohio State's going to lose 1 time. I can't see them losing more than that. They're just too loaded, but I do think a defeat is going to happen. The Big Ten East is just too loaded, plus that game at T.C.U. a little bit on the tricky side. But I have Ohio State winning the East, and I think that they will face Wisconsin for the Big Ten championship. A reminder before we wrap up, I will reveal all my predictions for all the major conference championship games and who I think will go to the college football playoff later in August on a special show. So check that out. That's my look at the Buckeyes. We'll see you next time.